Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. In this episode, I'm continuing my high-octane thrills with 2003's sequel to 2001's action-packed The Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, as directed this time around by John Singleton. So, as a disclaimer, I may give some spoilers for this film and others in the Fast and Furious series, and so please do switch off now if you don't want to hear any plot details for these films at all. Please do come back though when you have watched the films and let me know what you thought. I am always interested to know and so excited to know what you think about this series in general. So, following on from the events at the end of the last movie, which saw former detective Brian O'Connor, as played by Paul Walker, become a wanted fugitive after letting his mark, Dominic Toretto, as played by Vin Diesel, free following a raft of crimes and speeding violations, we now catch up with Brian keeping a low profile down in South Florida, making extra cash on the side with the street racing scene. However, his past catches up with him when he is tracked by his ex-boss, FBI agent Bilkins, as played by Tom Barry, and US Customs agent Markham, as played by James Remar, and coaxed into helping them bring down a money-laundering crime drug lord by the name of Carter Verone, as played by Cole Hauser, in return for all charges against him being dropped. He reluctantly agrees, but only if he can pick his partner. And in that, he chooses Roman Pierce, as played by Tyrese Gibson, a criminal himself, on tagged release after serving time for being caught with stolen goods when he and Brian were friends back in the day. Brian and Roman aren't exactly the best of friends, you know. Roman blames Brian for him serving time. But with the prospect of a clean record, Roman also takes up on the mission. Together, they race to become Verone's drivers, undercover to infiltrate his organisation, and along with fellow undercover operative Monica Ferrentes, as played by Eva Mendes, they plot to bring Verone down and to justice for good. So, the thing is, for me, with this movie, has always been that even though this is only the second movie in the franchise, the lack of Vin Diesel is most definitely felt. He had such a presence in the original, and together, him and Walker, they made such a good team that it was those that all we wanted to see more of, you know, back in the day. And okay, whilst we do get Walker reprising his role in this movie, everything else is new. Now, that's not a bad thing. It went out and it tried to do its own thing. But given what we had expected from the original, this did just not pull its weight, you know? It just didn't have the same grit that the original did, nor was it as captivating a story or indeed as developed characters as that movie had. Walker does a good job, you know, for the most part, but he does look like he's lost in it at points, you know. Gibson, on the other hand, you know, he does actually bring a new role and makes it his own. Something he will go on to repeat in some of the later installments in a fantastic way, adding some humour, investment and attitude, you know. And I do have to be honest, I really didn't think Gibson was a good fit at first. Too much bravado, you know, and so obviously trying to add another alpha in an attempt to replace the spark lost with Diesel. However, no, I do have to go back on this and say that with hindsight, I really did enjoy his performance. You know, obviously now knowing where this series takes his character going forwards, having him reappear in installments 5 through 9 at the very least. That is probably one of the main things that this film actually gives us, you know? Along with the introduction of Tej Parker, as played by Chris Ludacris Bridges, who also joins the main cast as the resident electronics expert, also appearing in the main series from the 5th installment too, you know? So it actually does provide quite a bit of backbone for the series going forwards. Otherwise, the movie is a little understated, really. It's a bright and light entry into the series, but it really doesn't have that much substance either as a standalone movie, or indeed as part of the series overall. It has more of an exotic feel than the first. It certainly does. Positively neon at times. You know, it feels that bright. It definitely has more of a vibrant feel to its cinematography, but falls short in terms of its overall story arc, which fails to really inspire or really pull you in, being instead a plot ripped straight from any generic Miami Vice episode, you know? Just with a few more flash, fast and colourful cars thrown in. It is possibly the film of the series that doesn't take itself too seriously, or certainly the earlier ones, with a very understated plot, almost absent villain, and basically just lots of fast car chases in order to prove who can stare at the passenger side seat the longest, you know? And in that, it is probably the most tongue-in-cheek outing that we have for a little while. For the most part, at this point, it is interesting that as this is pretty much a standalone effort in terms of the franchise overall, it does try to distance itself from the first. It's acknowledged enough so you know that they're related, but it is downplayed. It is obvious that at this time, the series was not, you know, it did not know where it was going. You know, it had no kind of formed plan. I think the main thing really here, and why this is a letdown for many, is simply the story. It has all of the other elements that really do make pretty much up most of the other films. Some great stunts, fantastic cars, great cast, but somehow its stakes just aren't high enough, and it never really takes off. And as I touched on a moment ago, but there's simply just not much of a villain. Hauser never really commits as Verone, or I didn't feel that way. Sure, he's smarmy enough, you know, but you never really feel like you ever get to know what makes him tick. And although we do have a torture scene, he's just never really feels like a villain you wouldn't want to double-cross. He doesn't really have any ISP for that. And in that, when he is double-crossed, it doesn't kind of thrill, regardless of how much our duo want to make you believe that they were ever in any kind of real danger. It doesn't have a decent end sequence. Oh, sorry. It does have a decent end sequence. Never mind, doesn't. It does have a decent end sequence. Though from an escapade kind of buddy element point of view, with a number of decent stunts, chase sequences, and a good old classic double cross, you know? The last 30 minutes or so are pretty hyped, and you can see that as things have kind of started to warm up as they were going along, they were indeed having more fun with it, you know? It is just a shame that the whole movie couldn't have been a bit more like that. I must also say though, however, and I usually don't comment on editing very much, but I did actually notice at times it was actually quite sloppy. A green screen actually appeared that hadn't been filled in, and the stunt drivers at some points were so noticeable. And for a film like this, that's where we are focusing our attention. Coupled with that, the camera work during the races was literally all over the place. You know, I appreciate that this was to give the impression of speed, but it really just did feel like we were on a boat, not least a car, you know? Overall, this movie, it does probably classify as filler for the series, but I still love it for what it is. It doesn't take itself too seriously and still entertains, for the most part, with a number of decent races and a bevy of souped-up races, you know? Racing is indeed still at its heart. It doesn't have a strong story. In fact, I would say it is the weakest of the franchise in that respect. It's a mediocre plot that could have been plucked from Miami Vice, straight from the pages of. In fact, I almost expected Crockett and Tubbs to pop round the corner, you know, that or Horatio Kane. Had that kind of same, kind of that bright glare about it, and that kind of talk to the sky acting that they seem to do in Miami, or the floors, you know, or the talking to the floor that these shows had. It must be something to do with Miami, because in both of those shows, that's what they did. They either talked to the ceiling or to the floor. They never actually had eye contact with the people that they were talking to, even their partners. Anyway, I've never been to Miami. I don't know. I can't say. But anywho, that's how it felt in this. I mean, I don't know, unless they were trying to recapture kind of the magic of those kind of shows, you know, with it being Miami. But ultimately, for as fun as I do find it, I must admit you do just get the feeling it was just there to keep the seat warm, if you know what I mean. It just didn't have the style or the edge that the original had. Absence of characters notwithstanding. But indeed, it is still great fun nonetheless, and a bit of light relief, you know, if you want that. It might be at the bottom of the barrel for the franchise, but it still has plenty of full throttle action when it tries. Plenty of sun and a nice chilled kind of laid back southern Florida vibe. In summary, nice cars, awesome location, poor plot. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have liked the episode, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions and other movie related content. Absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk. Definitely love to have you back. But most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you again for The Fast and the Furious presents Tokyo Drift. And yes, thank you very much and goodbye.